today's video, episode number 3, we're talking about data types, as I had promised you guys. So, in Python, we have two different type of data types. We have primitive data types and collection data types. So, primitive data types, they basically just hold one thing in memory. So we'll talk about that first, since they're a little bit easier. First, we have ints. Int is basically a number. Int equal to 1, 2, 3, any whole number, -1, -2, -3. Now, ints, like I just said, they're any whole number. This means that if you try to put a decimal into an int, or if you do any mathematical equation on an int, you will get an error. Ints are only whole numbers. If you want to use a decimal point number, there's another data type in Python, very similar to ints, but they're called floats. Now, floats can be whole numbers, like we talked about before, or they can also be decimal points. So it can be 1.1, 5.5, and you can do mathematical equations on floats. Now, one thing that I want to point out to you guys, and one thing that you guys should always be aware of in any computing language, not just Python, is that numbers are not stored exactly, right? This is a little strange to understand, but when you think about it, it makes sense, because in computers, they don't really understand numbers. They have zeros and ones. So what can computers store? They can go by quarters, by 25, 50, 75, and wholes. And 75 technically isn't even stored as a computer properly. The only reason we can store it is because we can do 1 minus the original 25. It's a little strange and it's a little hard to wrap your head around, but when you do mathematical equations in any language, you have to remember that a computer's not going to do exactly what you think. When you do something simple like 0.3 minus 0.2, it doesn't give you 0.1 like you think. It gives you an approximation of what it stores in memory. It's not exact. With ints and floats out of the way, we can continue now our primitive data types with two more things. Strings, which we've talked about before, which is basically any sequence of characters in memory surrounded by quotes. Strings, they're pretty useful because you can pretty much input anything into them. They can be an empty string. You can literally just put 2 quotes and it'll be empty, and the user can edit that. You can set a string in stone to never be edited. Strings are cool. You can convert them, you know. The next thing that we have are booleans. Now, booleans, they sound a little tricky, but booleans are a lot more simple than you think. They're a 0 or a 1, or a true or false. That's it. Booleans are probably the most simple one to use because, you know, they're always true or false. And it's kind of what the entire computer is built around. So we've talked about primitive data types. Next thing I'd like to talk about with you guys are collection data types. Now, the first data type I'd like to talk about with you guys are lists. Now, lists in memory are declared with brackets, and the values inside of the list are separated with commas. Now, lists are useful when, let's say, you have something like a grocery store list and you want to add it to this list or remove from this list. You can have apple, banana, blueberries, and easily remove or add something into the list, and it'll grow as you basically add and remove stuff. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about with you guys are sets. Now, sets in Python are pretty similar to lists, but sets are cool in the fact that they are unique items only. So if you have apple once in memory, you cannot add apple again into it like you can with a list. Now, how do you declare a set? Sets are strange in Python because unlike everything else, where you can declare it immediately, sets you have to declare before you can actually use it. So how do you do that? You have your hash set equal to set with parentheses, and that's how you declare your set. Now you can refer back to your hash set using just curly brackets. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, why can't I just use curly brackets to immediately call a set? Well, there's a different data type in Python, which we'll talk about towards the end of the video, which is a very powerful tool. This already uses curly brackets, which is why they set it up like this in Python. So sets are very important to keep in mind because they basically check for duplicates for you instantly and give you a list with just unique items. It's very powerful and used a lot in coding interview questions, so you should make sure you really understand this. If you don't, ask questions and I'll answer for you. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about are tuples. Now, tuples are cool because they are set in stone. You set it one time and you can't change it. The way you declare a tuple in Python is interesting. A lot of people think you declare it with parentheses. Nope. Tuples in Python are declared by the comma. So if you put 0, 0, that is now a tuple in memory. You don't need the parentheses. Parentheses are used by developers to make it look more clean, like a coordinate system, like in math. But the computer doesn't care about that. All it cares about is that little comma. So you have to remember this. If you're writing down a number and you put 10,000, 253, nope, not an integer, not a float point like you're thinking. It's now going to be a tuple in memory that you cannot change. So tuples are interesting and you have to remember how they're declared, or you might accidentally make one of your numbers a tuple by accident, and it can be really hard to debug. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with you guys are what I mentioned earlier with those curly brackets, dictionaries. Dictionaries are awesome. They're one of the best things you can use in computer science because they give you instant lookup. So when is a dictionary used? Let's say you have a gym app and you have a user and they get a user ID when they create their account at first. This is automatically created behind the scenes. Now the user has a username that they want to put into. Now this user ID is going to refer to that username. This allows for you adding a whole bunch of things in memory all linked to one item. This means you can have run all set to one user, a workout set to one user, what a person ate all set to one user. You can store it all to one user and instantly look it up. Dictionaries are extremely powerful, but there is one downside. The downside is the amount of memory a dictionary takes up. While you have a small app and a small user base of 1,000, a couple thousand, maybe even 1 million users, your Python dictionary will work perfectly fine. But now let's say you're scaling up, your app blew up, you never expected this to happen, and now you have 10 million users. Your computer physically has to make space in its little RAM on top of everything else that you're already running on your computer. Let's say you have a game in the background, you have your Spotify, you have your 15 tabs open because none of us ever close our tabs. Now your computer's RAM is also being blown up by this insane amount of memory from all these users. Your app is going to instantly crash whatever device it's using, and the user is going to uninstall it immediately. So your job as a coder is to go through all the different data types and decide what is most applicable to your creation, your application. It's a little difficult, and obviously you're probably not going to get it right on your first shot. That's what the fun is as a developer, getting stuff wrong, retrying, because nothing is ever right the first time. You have to keep putting effort into it until what you envision in your mind becomes a reality. That's the fun of it. So this is data types. We're gonna end this video here, and I will come back to you guys in the next video. I'm thinking I might do object-oriented programming or something along those lines. I'll get back to you guys, and we'll see what episode 4 holds for us. Now look at this guy, you guys. There's a little froggy right there. So I think he was learning some Python with us. So if you think you can't learn it, remember, the frog was learning. You can learn it. Come on. Put some time to it. Sit down, code for 10, 15 minutes. See what you come up with, and let me know.